But we're going to begin with day 44 of the disaster in the Gulf. NBC's Brian Williams is in Grand Isle, Louisiana, with the latest. Brian, good morning to you.
Well, good morning, Meredith. And think about this. It's been 40 days now, and with all these attempts to fix it, our hearts rise and then sink, and they all have interesting, unusual names like Top Hat and Top Kill and Junk Shot, and now the latest, and it has a new name all its own, and all the while, the Gulf behind us here fills with oil. A mile below the ocean surface, BP's latest attempt to control the oil spill is now underway. Robots cut the leaking pipe, and that's the first step in the slice and cap effort. It's a temporary fix, though. The long-term hope remains those relief wells, which won't be ready until August. The environmental catastrophe in the Gulf, the worst in U.S. history, is now the focus of the Justice Department, confirming on Tuesday both criminal and civil investigations into the oil rig explosion and the spill that now taints this entire coastline.
We will prosecute to the fullest extent of the law anyone who has violated the law.
Tough talk again from the president in Washington, standing with the two men who will lead the presidential commission looking into this disaster.
Morning, everybody.
President Obama urged them to follow the facts wherever they lead.
We owe all those who've been harmed, as well as future generations, a full and vigorous accounting of the events that led to what has now become the worst oil spill in U.S. history.
Last night, traveling to Grand Isle with a local charter fishing boat captain, we came upon some of the shrimp boats that have been hired by BP to put out the oil boom. An eerie sight at nightfall. Not a single vessel is being used to harvest shrimp. In Venice, the Coast Guard and BP continue to scramble to combat this growing crisis. From deploying those local fishermen to drawing up strategies to defend the marshes and the Gulf. It's taken a while, but it's now a team effort to protect Plaquemines Parish from the oil.
We're going to be proactive in cleaning up this oil and also protecting the marshlands and the sensitive areas.
And workers will stay in floating hotels near the trouble spots in order to respond faster.
We can rotate folks when they're resting. We can have additional resources then to get a full day's work, if you will.
Everyone's aware there isn't a moment to waste, as signs of just how long this disaster could last are now everywhere. And booms are everywhere in this region, too, trying to contain or soak up that oil. 44 days of waiting. This is just the latest fix. Of course, all of it may come down to these wells on either side to relieve the pressure. In the meantime, about a third of the Gulf waters now closed off to fishing. Matt and Meredith?
Yeah, Brian, you mentioned those wells. Let me start with that. How confident are officials that those wells will do the trick?
Well, that's a real hole shot. It's got to be exact. They drill these two holes down. They've already made the turn now, going back toward the stricken well. They've got to hit it exactly, but that is the way to relieve the pressure on this, and we won't know. It's done very exactly with GPS and other technologies. We won't know until they bore through.
Yeah, meanwhile, among other things, you have been talking to some of the families who make their living out there in the Gulf. There's a lot of frustration, a lot of anger. How badly are they hurting at this point?
Well, the way they put it around here is this. After Katrina, the ocean waters were roiled, the Gulf waters were upset, but there were still shrimp out there on the bottom. If you had a boat and some skill, you could go out and get them and make a living. They've done nothing wrong in this instance, but their right to make a living has gone away. They can't work no matter how good their boat, no matter how skilled they are. This is frustrating, and there's no money coming into these households.
That's terrible. Meanwhile, James Cameron, the movie director, has been called in to help. Do you know what role he is expected to play?
Well, you know, we checked into this yesterday. 31,600 people have called BP's hotline with ideas of their own. MIT scientists, Princeton scientists. There's a former Navy admiral down here who has an idea of his own. 8,000 people have filled out forms. A committee at BP goes through them, so Cameron gets in line with everyone else who thinks good-naturedly and hoping it'll work, thinks they have a solution no one else has thought of here.
Yeah, well, you never know. Maybe one of them will. Brian Williams, thank you so much. And Brian will have much more from the Gulf tonight on Nightly News.
All right, let's get into this. First off, this oil rig belongs to BP, which is Dutch Royal Shell Queen Beatrix. What we have here now is actually this is a very interesting scenario. It just so happens that the timing is coming right around NLE. But what we see here, this was a major power play gone wrong. Queen Beatrix of the Netherlands owns BP. BP is Dutch Royal Shell. Okay? The point being that they were doing extreme subterranean digging here. Geologists had figured with data that they had gained from actually Caesar and Skynet, which, oddly enough, get into the whole point that Skynet was originally created for was actually oil, surveying before they realized that it could be a command control hub for everything else. But back in '69, it was simply that. It was a system to do surveil of oil. This vein is a connecting vein. It is a very deep subterranean vein that links the oil pool strategic reserve in the Black Hills to the oil pool reserve in Venezuela. Now, yeah, that's how big this thing is. The point is that by tapping there, if you understand about drilling rights and things like that, whoever was to tap this particular vein first, which is the most high-pressure vein in the world right now that we know of, then they would be able to lay claim to it. So it was a power play between Queen Beatrix and Dick Cheney. Basically, two factions of the Bilderberg are at war here over this natural resource. Initially, what happened was, and this is from very reliable sources, one of them was actually on site working with, the military to actually contain certain things. Can't get into names. Being that wishes to remain confidential. Anyway, point being, timeline of events here, they got to the point where they were almost tapped the vein. They put down the hydraulic cement. Now, typically you are supposed to wait 72 hours mandatory before you start drilling through that cement. Because they knew Halliburton was on their back and was going to be coming out soon and probably trying to sink a rig very close, they tapped it after 5 hours.
You've got to be kidding me.
It's ballistic. Okay? The pressure on the vein was high enough that it actually did lift the rig off the ocean surface. That's true. But it did not break the drill point. The drill point went back down and started drilling. They started pumping. They didn't even have to pump. It was so high pressure that all they did was open the fucking, excuse my language, open the barrels, and it started pouring in. Halliburton, literally, while it was a Halliburton quote-unquote team, the people sent out, they were there for 20 minutes. Now, I've talked to two internal sources who are like, yeah, that's exactly along the lines of what most likely happened. Halliburton was on the platform for no more than 20 minutes. Essentially, what was on the platform was 10 men from Blackwater. They rigged the entire platform and blew it. The reason being is the only way to prevent Dutch Royal Shell from having the rights on that vein was to eliminate the platform and create a catastrophe that would negate their drilling rights. So they literally, Halliburton literally, intentionally demolitioned the platform.
That's what I thought happened the entire time, and all of my family and friends were arguing with me on Facebook about it, saying, "Oh, well, you're just crazy. If something happened with Halliburton, they'll catch them. Don't worry about it." No,
they won't. The reason they won't, and you're completely right. You're completely right that Halliburton did this, and I have very internal sources that have all backed this up. The reason they won't catch them is because in order to go after the only people who would be able to lay a claim against Halliburton would be BP. And if BP was to do that, people would discover the fact that, well, they already have, the fact that the amount of oil that's leaking out of there causing tectonic plate shifts.